Hello everybody, welcome inside the Fantasy Hut. I'm the league commissioner, David Kiarsis, putting together a podcast here for you today just to wrap up the 2016 season before we get to the Fantasy Hut's exclusive interview with its 2016 champion, Kevin Kiarsis, owner of Le'Veon's Bell. But before we get to that, just to quickly sum up our championship weekend, Le'Veon's Bell, as I said, won its second championship in franchise history, became the fifth team in league history to win multiple championships, defeating D. Butters in what was a somewhat tightly contested matchup throughout the course of the weekend until it pulled away late. Mostly thank you to Le'Veon Bell scoring 2 touchdowns in Pittsburgh's win over Baltimore. In our third place game, the Swords, coming off a disappointing and somewhat heartbreaking semifinal loss to D. Butters, salvaged its season somewhat with a dominating win over soon-to-be champ to claim third place, get ownership in the franchise, a little bit of cash to cap off its season. And then in our consolation bracket, 40s defeated Mace's Aces to secure the top spot in the selection draft order, and Samp D's defeated Matty Natural Ice in the Sacco Bowl, meaning Matty Natural Ice and owner Pat McDermott will be the league's second Sacco, so we'll be sure to get him in a 2-2 come draft weekend in August, so that should be certainly fun to watch. But as I said, we're here to chat with Le'Veon's Bell owner Kevin Kiarsis. It was quite a season for now the 2-time champion. Won a regular season title, another division title, and now it's once again the champion of the league. So without further ado, let's go to the pool for the exclusive interview. Le'Veon's Bell owner Kevin Kiarsis. So we're sitting here with Le'Veon's Bell owner Kevin Kiarsis, the league's 2016 champion. This is our first opportunity to get to sit with you to talk about the title season. Before we get into any of the details, how are you feeling? What are the emotions like knowing you're once again the champion of the league?
Feels great. I was pretty ecstatic to win the championship once again. It seems like every year, you're in the playoffs, you got to grind out every point, and especially for my team, I get a touchdown at the end of a Monday night game or Sunday night, something crazy happens, and I'm freaking out all night, and then I finally get a play at the end, and I seem to just kind of make these plays to get 1 point, 2 point victories. In the case of soon-to-be champ, 0.02, probably the smallest margin of victory in playoff history. Must have been tough for him, but I was glad to get to the championship and face D. Butters for the third time. Get the winning record in the playoffs against him and bring home championship number 2.
So any discussion about your season has to start, way back in July. You came up with an off-season strategy, made a number of trades. Some of them were obviously equally as important, but it all started with your 10-pick trade with Ball So Hard U. Take us through the mindset of that. How'd you come up with that plan of attack, and how did it work out so perfectly for you?
Yeah, well, I don't play any other fantasy sports. I do fantasy football, and that's it. So, my off-season starts probably, I'd say, right after the draft, the NFL draft for that year, and I start to plan my team and what I'm going to do. And I was looking back at draft results in the past, and it just seemed like those middle rounds, a lot of picks, a lot of guys you think are going to do stuff that don't really do that much. So I figure, why don't I make a big package deal and try to get a number 1 first-round pick and sort of stock up on studs. So that was the mindset going into it. And thankfully, there's some good guys in the league that are open to talking about trades, and I had some good conversations and we made some deals. And then, I gave away a little too much, I think, at first, but I was just dead set on getting that first-round pick. And thankfully, I had some other trade partners that I got to make some moves with, and move back in the round, get a keeper, and then I did another trade with soon-to-be champ where I basically allowed me to replace Ben Roethlisberger in the 3rd round with a quarterback that I thought would be on equal footing all the way down in the 8th round. So I got to keep some more picks up in the top of the round. And, all said and done, I had the 2 first-round picks, but I got a bunch of those middle-round picks back anyway. So it let me have a lot of elite talent, and thankfully the injury bug didn't get me too bad, so it worked out nice.
I think that's kind of one thing with fantasy sports is that there are tons of different strategies, tons of different thought processes out there. And any strategy works if you pick the right players, and I think you nailed it on the head that the one thing that was going to be a problem for you would have been an injury, which you were fortunate enough to avoid. So maybe that kind of answers the question, but were there any concerns about the strategy? Did you ever kind of question it as the season was going on?
Not too much. One thing that was sort of frustrating is that I spent most of my bench spots holding down backup players in the case of injury. So it gave me few options in terms of switching players out and switching players in. But I always knew if one of my guys got injured, I had the direct backup, so I was sort of set in that position. So I had D'Angelo Williams and I had the Broncos backup running backs and stuff like that. Unfortunately, they didn't play all year, but it let me have a certain level of comfort in terms of, okay, if I lose a guy, I'll have a replacement guy that can step up and sort of contribute right away. It's a little different when you start to get injuries to Julio Jones later in the year, and that's you're getting a guy that you expect to put up 25 points sitting on your bench. That's not good. But luckily, I made some good moves. I picked up Deshaun Jackson in like week 13, and he helped seal the deal for me in the playoffs. So overall, I think I was pretty steadfast in my commitment to my team and my studs. And really, a lot of it has to do with I wanted players on my team that I personally like, that I like to root for. So even if I lose in fantasy, I'm losing based on players that I like, instead of just some guy I picked up that's doing okay and then he ends up doing shitty later on. So I think I just stayed pretty consistent all year.
So how do you use this strategy moving forward? What did this season teach you about how you want to run your franchise in the future? Is the goal of the offseason always going to be the same, trying to stack elite players, or do you judge it on a year-by-year basis?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a year-by-year thing. Every year is different. Different players are being kept. You have a different draft position. So my strategy is the season ends, and I start to evaluate what I have in terms of keepers, where my draft position is, and then I start looking at other teams, trying to decide if I can trade, upgrade keepers, try to get some draft picks. So moving forward, that's what I'm going to do this year. I've already started mapping out what players I think won't be available based on keepers. I got a draft position down, and I sort of do that every year. And then I start to look at rankings and decide, if I'm in this draft position, what guys are going to fall to me. And if that falls in line with something that I think is going to work, then I accept it. And if not, then I start to make some moves. And that's what happened last year or this year. I started to see what guys were going to fall to me, and I decided I needed to make some moves, and it seemed to work out pretty good.
So with all this focus on your strategy, sports tend to be a copycat league. Any concern any of the other owners in the league may adapt this strategy moving forward and use it themselves?
97, 98, 99, 100. Well, every owner has their own priorities and their own strategies, and any strategy works if you pick the right players. If you have the right players, the right draft position, and you have the pieces to make a move, you can make anything work. So it kind of depends on where people stand in the future and if they think that it's worth the risk of injury. And I'm not concerned. And maybe in the future, if someone wants to do that strategy, I'll be on the other end stacking picks and getting depth instead.
So obviously your keepers and your 2 first-round picks played a pivotal role in your success this season, but if you had to pick another player outside that collection of players that was most instrumental in your success this season, who would it be?
Yeah, I think that the clear answer to that is obviously Dak Prescott. I scooped him up in the 16th round. He's a Rookie of the Year candidate, and he's led the Cowboys to a #1 seed in the NFC. So, he's a playmaker, and I'm looking forward to having him in the future. And not to mention, he scores multiple touchdowns a week, just like I stay scoring multiple beers in the hot tub.
So try to put into words what this second title means to you. We talked a little bit about already what it means personally to you, but especially considering that your offseason strategy worked just as you planned, but then also historically and now where your franchise belongs in the conversation among the league's best.
2 in a row, just like the season sweep of Vantage. Dave, I'm glad you asked that question. There's been a lot of talk throughout the season about my strategy and whether it was the right move or not, and a lot of people questioned it. But now I'm sitting here with the hardware, so it seems to have worked out perfectly. It makes that championship that much more meaningful because I planned so carefully to make things happen, and it ended up working. In terms of sitting here in the league's best, now I got 2 championships, and I think I'm among the elite, and I'll be the defending champ, so give me your best shot. See what happens next year.
So where does Le'Veon Bell go from here? What does the future hold for your franchise?
Well, I think the future's bright. Whenever you got a staple of a team like Le'Veon Bell, like a #1 guy, everything looks good. So I got Le'Veon going forward. Now I got some bright young talent in Dak Prescott. So I'm excited with the team, the roster I have, and I think I can go for another ship next year.
So, Any extra last words that you want to add before we put the 2016 season to bed?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there you have it. The league's 2016 champion, Kevin Kiarsis, and Le'Veon's Bell.